All right, so what is the Dataverse connector? We had to ask. We asked Bing with the new AI. Everybody's talking about ChatGPT and all these new functionalities. So we asked the new Bing, and it returned back that it is a feature that allows you to integrate and synchronize data between Business Central and Dynamics 365 Sales. So pretty straightforward answer. Let's talk a little bit more about it. So this connector comes back to 2019 is when it originated. It resides within Business Central, and it provides bidirectional syncing of data between Dataverse, D365 Sales, and Business Central. And you can customize some of the field maps and directions as well.
And speaking of that, some of the things that it can connect are listed here on the screen. So to visualize this better, think about maybe an accounting team that increases a credit limit for a customer, only for the account manager to know instantly that the client has new buying power. Or the accounts receivable department always having an up-to-date information on the client because the sales team fed the data and it went directly to Business Central, phone numbers, addresses, things like that. Or a new item is available and it has some complex pricing structure, but as soon as your team enters that new availability in Business Central, it's available to use for your sales team. Or even like sales orders and invoices status can be seen real time. So these are the kind of exciting things that are happening just by using these connectors and the Microsoft suite. What we'd like to do now is move into a demo. So I've got an instance of Business Central open here. And what I'd like to do is just first go to the basics. So if I go to the search and I search for assisted setup, it's as easy as scrolling down and going to connect with other systems. You'll see two options here for Dataverse and D365 Sales. When you connect to Dataverse, you're linking your customers and contacts, your vendors, and your currency, I believe. When you connect to Dynamics 365 Sales, that's when you add in the ability to link your items, your opportunities, brings in your orders and your invoices. So it's all done simply by following an assisted setup method within this assisted setup process. So one thing, the Dataverse connection setup lives in this page called Dataverse connection setup, and it's loading now. But you can see that we've turned it on already. It takes a little bit of time to get it all linked. And this integration table mapping section is really what I want to show you today. So first of all, these are the out-of-the-box fields or tables, excuse me, that the integration covers. Anything outside of this would be custom. You'd have to bring in. If there's a field or a table that you want to sync that's not on this list, it would have to be brought in by a developer. They have a really good filter here, so you can create filters. So for example, with contacts, we have it set for only the contact type of person instead of company being on the contacts that come over, and only if they're associated with a company. So the salesperson or somebody that's using your CRM enters in a name, Don Williams, and Don is not associated with a company, but maybe for some reason the sales team still wants to have him in their system. He's not going to clutter up your ERP, your Business Central instance, because we have a filter on it. So I think that is a nice thing to shout out. Also, you can set the direction. So in this case, we have contacts syncing bidirectionally. So if you make an update in one system, it'll update in another. But for example, currency is only set in Business Central and it pushes to D365 Sales. Same
And
with payment terms.
I was going to say one best practice with that as well. I just want to jump in is if you have any that are unidirectional, like currency, it might be worth your while to control security to make sure that your users can't perform updates on that table in the system that's not going to sync, right? So currency, we don't want salespeople trying to update the currency exchange rate in D365 sales because it won't update BC. So take that security away from them to prevent issues down the road.
Really good point, Chad. So this is where you control everything. If there's something that you don't want to have syncing between systems, like maybe you don't want sales invoices to show up in your CRM, you can just turn that off. And it's as easy as not having that included in your sync ability. I want to show you, if I go to, let's see, customers, and let's just pick Mickey's Playhouse as an example. So we're in Mickey's Playhouse. Mickey's got a phone number, but they updated their phone number. So Mickey's new phone number is 555-421-5555. We'll make it easy to remember, okay? So that's Mickey's new phone number. If I want, I'm in Business Central now, so if I want our sales team to instantly see that change, I'm just going to go to sync and send that data to the Dataverse. It will also do it automatically, but if you want to see it instantly, you have that ability as well. And now when I go to sync account, I can navigate directly to Mickey's Playhouse in CRM in D365 Sales. It'll just take a second to come up because I haven't opened this record yet today. And Mickey's Playhouse now has a new phone number. So it's really amazing to see how that works. One side note that's kind of important that we notice when we use this, if you have an address in D365 Sales, you have the ability here to put United States or whatever you want. In Business Central, countries can only be their specific codes for them. So United States is always US. So one thing that's important to note is your country codes for specifically need to match Business Central before the sync happens. Otherwise, you'll have a failure to sync. So I think that's just a side note, also something good to remember. One other thing, this is kind of a neat, if I'm back in Business Central and I'm going to go and update a price on an item. So I'm going to go into items, let the system catch up to that. And let's just take this cute gecko that we have here in inventory, and we're going to give this gecko a new price. So right now he's selling for $9.99. We're going to up the price of him to $12.99. Okay. And let's remember to sync that price change. We're sending that data to the Dataverse. So instantly now we should be able to see that. So now when we go back in to this, and let's say that a salesperson is looking at an opportunity, we're going to look at Mickey's renovation project, and we're going to make a quote. So I have a quote here, but let's go ahead and make a new quote. Okay, so this is a new quote. We're going to add product. And the new product, let's make sure we get that gecko in here. Oh, look, $12.99. Let's order 10 of those for Mickey's Playhouse. And just for kicks, let's add some birds and a clock. We'll add 2 clocks. And then let's add hours because, I'm going to put this together. So I need 5 hours of my time. Okay, so now we've got a few things added. We're going to save that quote. And it's just as easy as that. The new prices are on there. We're going to go back to the presentation now and show you a few things, but we'll come back and show you how we can get this quote into Business Central. So let's go ahead and Chad, let's talk a little bit more about the limitations.
Sure. So Tracy, I think you've already mentioned some of these limitations, but we just want to reiterate the tool isn't perfect. No tool ever will be. And so there are some limitations. So we want to let you know before you try to use it. Again, only out of the box tables and fields in both systems will be used. And so if you want any custom fields to be mapped or any custom tables, you'll need a developer to expose those. You can do it. You can extend the connector in that way, but you'll need some code, which neither Tracy nor I can help you with, but we've got resources on the team who can.
We have a team.
We do. And then another point to call out, Tracy showed the functionality where you can push the updates from BC to Dataverse. If we're making those updates and if she didn't push those updates, they still would have been picked up on the job queue. But the updates, especially from Dataverse back to BC, those rely on the job queue. And so those, you can adjust the frequency of that. So some people might not need it as frequently as others, but it will be some sort of asynchronous background sync. And so it won't be truly real time. Now, there is a way that Microsoft is working on bringing that near real time possibility. It's a pretty new feature, so we don't talk about it much in this demonstration, but you can use Power Automate to actually trigger the job queue to run from a Dataverse update. And so you can trigger it and say, using Power Automate, you can say, when an account updates, go ahead and trigger the sync in Business Central to update accounts. And so you can trigger that using Power Automate to bring near real-time functionality, which is pretty neat. Addresses, again, you've got to validate the country codes. That's a big thing. You'll end up with hidden failures if you don't. And so we got to make sure the address abides by that 2-character code that's in Business Central. And Tracy and I have actually tackled that by using virtual tables from BC, which comes with the connector. You can actually expose the country and regions table from BC into Dataverse and use that for validation in the country region field of the address. So that's one clever way that you can get around that and make sure that your users are enforcing the right country, because we've seen, you're doing business in a new country and that country is not in BC, or you just type it wrong and you type the full United States. It'll lead to a failure. And so that'll lead to the 2 systems being out of sync. So some things like that, and it just gets complex fast, right? So if you've got multiple companies or multiple currencies, if you're trying to change the directions of the sync, if you're trying to make sure you're handling the timing, things like those Power Automate flows that you can do to make it more real time, those are different things that can just add complexity and add troubleshooting and time like that. So if you're handling a pretty simple use case, you might be just fine out of the box, right? But if you're a more complex customer, then you're gonna spend a little bit of time making sure this works for you.
Yeah, that was a good shout out, Chad.
So I mentioned Power Automate. We're gonna highlight a specific use case. So we're gonna add some power, and Power Automate is it comes with your Business Central and Microsoft 365 licenses. This is actually Microsoft's low-code, no-code solution. Low-code, no-code. It's to custom flows and automation. And so you can actually create automated flows using Power Automate to do some of these processes and make things work and connecting systems where they're not connected out of the box. So we've got a great use case that we've worked with and we wanted to showcase here, and that is connecting a quote from Dynamics 365 Sales to not natively, you can sync a quote to a quote, but we're going to sync a quote to a job in Business Central. So we want to manage it in the project management tool within BC. And so we're actually going to take all of the quote with all of its lines and send it over to Business Central. And this way we can actually manage, as a project manager, you can track the project costs, you can manage resources, you can invoice clients from that job in Business Central rather than just doing a quote to order process. So let's dig in and take a look at what this will look like. We're going to open up that quote that Tracy had a minute ago, and we've got all of the items on the quote. And so I think we're ready as the salesperson. We're ready to send it over for our project manager to pick it up in Business Central. So I'll narrate the part of the salesperson. We're going to click this button and run create BC job from quote. It's an on-demand flow is how I have it set up. You can, of course, configure the trigger to be maybe upon once the quote becomes active or different things like that. We're going to hit this run flow button. And then if we go to the flow runs page, we can actually see the flow running real time. So this is Power Automate that we're jumping into. And we can see all of the flow runs. Some of them have failed as we've tested through, but let's open that first one that is currently running. And you'll see every step that it's jumping through in the flow. So we built this up to create the job in Business Central. It's already done running, but if we scroll down, we can see all of these different steps. If we look into that try scope down in the orange, then we can actually see the Business Central steps. Now, a note on this, we needed a developer to expose the jobs table in a custom endpoint so that we can access that API. So jobs is not a part of the connector out of the box in Power Automate. So there are a lot of gaps like this where having a developer on hand just to write up a quick extension, expose some fields or expose some tables, it's going to be a common use case if you're doing anything that's not aligned with true out-of-the-box functionality. So we did that. Developer came in just for that beginning portion, and then we were able to take it from there in the no-code space. And so you can see we're creating a job. And then for every quote product, if we expand that apply to each quote product step, then you can see we're creating a job task and we're creating a job planning line for that task. So for each of those quote products, we're going to create a task and a planning line. And then at the end of that, we're actually going to close the quote and close the opportunity. So everything is bundled up on the D365 sales portion because they are done with their job, right? They sent it over to the ERP, and now the project manager is able to open Business Central and take a look at the newly created job.
Yeah, and that's where I can come over. So we're going to go back into our Cronus accessories shop and go to jobs. And you can see Mickey's Reno has been active at work this week. But we're going to open the most recent job where we can see all of the items that came over. If I wanted to add like a total line here, I always think that's kind of a nice thing to be able to see. So I'm going to total this line. And now I can see that my total cost for this project was only $400, whereas I was able to bill $989 for this project. I can further go into the job planning lines and see all of my lines more detailed and see, oh yeah, Tracy did, you know, we've estimated 5 hours for Tracy's work, and we've bought these things for this project. So Jobs has a really powerful way of handling the project management from that cost standpoint. And it's really nice when it can just flow in from the quote. So after the quote is won, it's now created a job for the project managers. So, okay, let's go back to our demo or our PowerPoint. So kind of to bring it all together, here's what our clients are loving about the connector. It's really about doing more with the licensing and the systems that we already have. So syncing customers, invoices, products, and orders between Business Central and D365 sales. Retrieving sales reports, invoices, and balances from the CRM system and using up-to-date Business Central data. Aligning an entire workforce with the power of real-time data. Really, that's what it comes down to. So we have a great blog on our website on Power Automate specifically, we want to point out. We're also on LinkedIn every other Thursday. So if you want to tune in and get more information on any of these topics and so much more. And also, of course, if you're ready to talk about this topic, you can reach out to Stone Ridge. We'd be happy to talk through your business needs specifically.